officially fall, and I have been seeing pumpkin recipes everywhere lately. Facebook, Instagram, Pinterest, you name it. But here's the thing, while they all look amazing, I want to know if they are actually worth making. So today I am putting 5 popular pumpkin recipes to the test, and I have never made these before, so you are getting my raw, real first-time reactions to how these actually taste. All right, first up, we had to go with the most iconic fall pumpkin recipe, a pumpkin spice latte. For those of you who are PSL fans, you probably know that the ones at those popular coffee chains are not only pretty expensive, but they're not the most healthy of ingredients. So let's make a version at home that is not only gonna save us money, but is healthy enough to drink every day. First up, for all of our recipes, we are gonna need pumpkin puree. Now, when you are looking for this, you may notice that your store also carries something called pumpkin pie filling. That is not what we want. That has additional ingredients. We just want the one that is 100% pure pumpkin. Now, while this is a very large can, do not worry, we have a lot of recipes to use it in today. And I'm even gonna show you some bonus tips at the end on ways to use up any leftovers that you have lingering in the fridge. So we're just gonna add our pumpkin puree into a saucepan with some pumpkin pie spice, soy milk, maple syrup, vanilla, and a pinch of salt. And of course, I will link all the recipes I'm showing you guys today in the description box down below in case you wanna try them yourself. And then you just wanna whisk your ingredients on the stove for about 5 minutes. And that's to help the spices dissolve so you don't get a grainy latte. And you can store this mixture in the fridge for around 5 to 7 days. And when you're ready to make a latte, simply add some of your pumpkin pie spice mixture into your coffee with some plant milk, or of course you can get fancy and use espresso instead. And I love to top mine with coconut whipped cream and a little more cinnamon. Okay, our pumpkin spice latte is ready. It smells really good, but let's go ahead and give it a taste. Wow, I'm surprised. That's actually really good. Now, full disclosure, I haven't had the Starbucks version in a long time, but this tastes amazing. Way better than I actually remember the Starbucks version. And it's just lightly sweet. I think that for mine, I would probably add a little bit more maple syrup, which is really easy to do as you're making your coffee in the morning. Just go ahead and add a little bit more sweetness if you like. I like that for my flavored drinks to make them a little bit sweeter. But other than that, like the rest of the flavors are pretty much perfect for this. I'm gonna give this an 8 out of 10. It was really easy to make and honestly really tasty. If you are looking for a cheaper and healthier version, give this one a try. It's really good. Up next, I wanted to do a warm, cozy, fall-inspired breakfast, and what better way than to add some pumpkin to our pancakes. Now, I have seen a lot of pumpkin pancake recipes, and I actually tried one before that was a total flop. The pancakes were dense and chewy, so I actually saw this other recipe by Rainbow Plant Life, and if you know Nisha's recipes, you know they are almost always foolproof. So even though the recipe is for sheet pan pancakes, which I had never done before, I wanted to give it a try. So for this recipe, we're gonna make a buttermilk first, which is just apple cider vinegar and plant milk. And then we'll do all of our dry ingredients in a big bowl, whisk that up. And then for our wet ingredients, we need pumpkin puree, sugar, and orange zest. I didn't have any oranges, so I just used tangerine instead, which apparently is an acceptable swap. Then just add in our buttermilk, and all of that goes into our big bowl. And we're just gonna gently stir to combine. You don't wanna overmix here. Now, my hack for using parchment paper is to actually crumple it up first. It helps sit better on the baking sheet, and then we'll just spread out our pancake mixture, and that is pretty much it for this recipe. All we need to do now is sit back, relax, and let these bake. Now, you guys, even taking these out of the oven, I was so skeptical of these turning out well, because just sheet pan pancake, like the concept, doesn't seem like it's gonna work. But let me show you my taste test of how these turned out. The orange zest is really good. Don't skip that because I was skeptical, but it is a perfect addition to this pancake. I actually could have used a little bit more in mine. One other thing about the texture that is kind of funny is I feel like it tastes like there's egg in here. It has like that bouncy egg-like texture, but there's no egg. The texture is really good. These turned out so well. I am so pleasantly surprised. Super skeptical, but worth making. If you are looking for a warm, cozy fall breakfast, definitely make these. I might even make these for our Christmas breakfast because they are so easy. And I really found that the pumpkin pie spice was not overpowering on these. I did make some slight adjustments, which I will list down below. And that really made these just warmly spiced and almost like a gingerbread flavor, which is why I thought that they will be perfect for Christmas as well. Now, the next recipe had me really curious because it is not your typical pumpkin recipe. We usually see a lot of muffins or breads for pumpkin, but this is actually a recipe for pumpkin gnocchi. Now, I have never made gnocchi from scratch before. Everyone says that it's really easy, but it does look really involved. So I had to try it out for myself. Now, there are two ways you could make this recipe. You could just do pumpkin puree and flour, But to make it more like a traditional gnocchi, I wanted to use some baked potato in there, which apparently makes it a little bit fluffier and just is a lot closer to a traditional gnocchi recipe. So right before starting this recipe, I baked a potato at 400 degrees for around an hour. And this would work really well if you were doing a meal prep day and you were baking a bunch of things in the oven. You could even bake like 5 or 6 potatoes at once and use those for your prep and just save one of them for the gnocchi. And then you want to wait till the potato cools slightly. And very importantly, you just want to take out the inside of the potato as softly and delicately as you can. Apparently, if you mash it all around with a fork, you are going to get a gummy texture, which is not good for gnocchi. Now, the original recipe did say to use a potato ricer, which I don't have that tool, and I really didn't think it was necessary, but after making this, I see why they suggest one. I did find a couple large clumps of potato as I was making my dough. So in hindsight, I do think the dough would have come out a little smoother if I had used one, but I don't think it's worth buying a whole piece of equipment just for this recipe. And then once your dough of flour, potato, and pumpkin has come together, you'll wanna make long ropes with your dough. And then you're gonna cut them into tiny little pillow shapes. And I was surprised at how much gnocchi this made. I was expecting like a small little plateful, but this made a whole sheet pan and an extra plate. So I actually ended up putting some aside to freeze. I just froze them on the pan itself. And then once they're frozen, you can add them to a Ziploc bag or a Tupperware. Now for our sauce, there are a bunch of different options. You could just do a classic marinara sauce, but I wanted something a little more fall inspired. So I wanted to do a sage pumpkin cream sauce, because apparently sage pairs really well with pumpkin. So for this sauce, I just started by sauteing onion, garlic, and sage while I soaked some raw cashews in hot water, and then just added the soaked cashews, saute mix, pumpkin, soy milk, veggie broth paste, nutritional yeast, and salt and pepper to my blender. And then you just blend that until it's very smooth. Meanwhile, I boiled my gnocchi, which only take a couple minutes to cook. They are so quick. And then I added them to the pumpkin sauce and of course garnished with a little black pepper. Gnocchi, 5 out of 10, just because they were too much work for the result. They're good, but they're not worth the effort, in my opinion. This sauce, on the other hand, 9 out of 10. This is delicious. I think I'm gonna make some plain pasta and just put this on there instead, because it is that good. It's like the perfect amount of fall flavor, not too pumpkin-y, just a light amount of sage. And so after this kind of flop recipe, I wanted to redeem myself with another pumpkin pasta. So of course, Rainbow Plant Life to the rescue. I saw this recipe for a pumpkin lasagna soup, and this just looks amazing, plus the reviews are all really good, so I had to see if it lives up to the hype. I also love anything that cooks in my Instant Pot because it's less hands-on cooking for me, and I love that. So I basically just started by chopping everything up first, and that way we can just throw everything in the Instant Pot when it's ready. So I chopped some onion, carrots, garlic, and bell peppers, and then actually used the saute function on the Instant Pot to start off. And then once there's a little bit of caramelization, I just added in the veggie broth. And then for this recipe, I wanted to swap out the chickpeas for red lentils. My husband is not a huge fan of chickpeas, and I have made a different lasagna soup recipe that uses red lentils. And when you cook them in the Instant Pot, they basically just dissolve into the broth and just thicken it and add a lot of protein and fiber without even noticing that they're there. So I knew that that would make a really good swap. And then I also wanted to add in a little bit more vegetables because I thought that it was a little bit lacking in veg. So I decided to add in a couple bell peppers. And then the rest of the ingredients: coconut milk, nutritional yeast, salt, and pepper. And then of course we're gonna need some lasagna noodles. I really like these oven ready ones, but of course regular lasagna noodles work here as well. And then last but not least, some herbs, our pumpkin puree, and some tomato sauce. Then I just set my Instant Pot on high pressure for 4 minutes. And then once your Instant Pot is going, you basically are gonna set it and forget it, so you can do any other prep work that you need to in the kitchen or do something else entirely, like relax. And that is why I love cooking in my Instant Pot. And then when the Instant Pot timer goes off, just make sure you do a quick release of the steam. I actually forgot to do that with mine, and I totally overcooked the noodles, so do not forget. And then so when the pan is down, you can go ahead and open your lid and just look at this delicious goodness in here. Let's go ahead and plate some up. Now, the original recipe calls for a tofu ricotta to add to this. I was too lazy to make it, and honestly, after tasting it, I kind of feel like you don't need it. But if you did want to do those extra steps, I'm sure it would be really delicious on here. And you guys, not only did I love this recipe, but both my husband and daughter really loved it too. My only critique is that the noodles got a little bit overcooked, and I think that is just my fault from forgetting to do the quick release on the pressure when it was done cooking. But overall, the flavors are great. I really liked the swap for red lentils instead of chickpeas, and I 100% will be making this again. It is so easy easy to just throw in your Instant Pot and so good on a chilly fall day. This next one claims to be easy because it is just a 1-bowl recipe, and I did want to try something on the sweeter side in our pumpkin recipe collection. Now, I have tried a pumpkin muffin recipe on this channel before. It was an oil-free recipe from a few years ago, but in my experience, oil-free baking is really difficult to get the texture right, and while those muffins were decent, I didn't find myself making them again and again, so I wanted to give another recipe a chance. And if you guys know Sam's recipes from It Doesn't Taste Like Chicken, you will know that she is almost always spot on with her recipes, and especially her baked goods, she is the master at getting the texture just right. And we're gonna add our dry ingredients first: flour, sugar, baking powder, and spices. Now, the original recipe actually calls for 1 tablespoon of pumpkin pie spice here. Now, I personally thought that seems like way too much spice, especially for my husband, who is not a huge pumpkin spice fan, and I wanted him to be able to enjoy these as well. So while I do trust Sam's judgment in terms of flavor, I just wanted to reduce it a little bit for our family's taste buds. Now, I know someone's gonna ask, can you swap out the oil for something like applesauce? If you were going to do that, I personally would just follow an already oil-free recipe. Those usually turn out better than trying to do your own swap. That being said, of course, you could always experiment. If you do try it out, let us know in the comments down below how it goes. And then finally, we are going to combine our wet and dry ingredients together and mix very gently until the batter comes together. Then add to our muffin cups and bake at 375 for around 20 minutes. And I decided to do a little bit of brown sugar and extra walnuts on the tops of my muffins, which turned out so nicely. And just look at the texture of these. I cannot resist a muffin that is still warm, even though it's best to let it cool all the way. So good, perfect fluffy texture. Just the right amount of spice. These are a winner for sure. Oh my gosh, so good. You have to try these. These are definitely going into our regular fall rotation. I was so happy with this recipe. Now, no matter how many pumpkin recipes you make, it does seem like there always end up being leftovers in this can. And sometimes it's not enough for another full recipe, but you also don't want to waste it by throwing it out. And this actually does not keep in the fridge for very long. I think it's only recommended for around 5 days refrigerated once open. So my first suggestion is going to be to freeze it. I really like these silicone ice cube trays with a lid. You can basically just scoop any leftovers into here, smooth out the top, add them into your freezer, and then pop out the frozen cubes into a Ziploc bag or a Tupperware once frozen. Just defrost them in the fridge or on your countertop and add them into recipes as you normally would. But if you didn't want to do the freezer hack and you just want to use the pumpkin up, I'm going to show you a couple really easy ways to use up pumpkin puree throughout the week just by adding it into your everyday meals. First up is a smoothie. Now, I know that cold smoothies may not be top of mind depending on where you live and if it's already really cold there, but if smoothies are a regular part of your weekday routine, this can be a really easy way to use up some of that puree and also get a bonus of healthy vitamins and fiber added in. Next up is soup or curry. Now, while you could follow a regular recipe that uses pumpkin puree or even like whole chunks of pumpkin, I have found that just adding in a few tablespoons here and there as I'm making a recipe is another really easy way to do it. So for example, I do make curry a few times a month because it is a really good way to use up leftover veggies in the fridge. So as my curry is cooking, I just add a couple tablespoons of pumpkin puree, and that not only thickens it a bit, but also boosts the flavor. You could even do this for cooking rice or quinoa, or even stir some into your morning oats as they're cooking. Pasta sauces are another great way to do this as you're cooking up, say, something like a red sauce on the stove. A few tablespoons of pumpkin is gonna add in bonus nutrition, use up the puree, and honestly, you probably can't even taste it. So it's not like making this huge pumpkin recipe. It's really just a good way to use everything up. Now, if you are looking for other fall-inspired recipes, I'm gonna link my Healthy Fall ebook down below. There are a couple pumpkin recipes in there, but it also features some other amazing fall produce like squash and sweet potatoes, and just has everything from breakfast all the way to dessert. So go check that out if you haven't already, and let me know in the comments which of the recipes from today you are most excited to try first.